I can imagine that strategists around Andy are saying, look, we've got to find some way for a bridge back to people coming back to us from the Greens. And maybe if we changed our approach on Gaza, that might help. But I mean, I think actually that's the wrong way to conduct foreign policy.
Let's focus on something that Andy Burnham, our Prime Minister in waiting, released last night on social media. He was answering some questions from people, and he got asked a question about Gaza, and he apologised for Labour's initial response to Israel's military action in Gaza, saying that the party didn't get it right.
The unbearable suffering in Gaza is a scar on our collective conscience. It's completely unacceptable that innocent Palestinians, including children, continue to be killed. That there's still a humanitarian crisis with too little aid getting in, and that the Israeli military continues to expand the area it controls in Gaza. We've got to do more to put pressure on the Israeli government. I know many people feel that at the start of Israel's military action in Gaza, my party didn't get it right, and I am sorry about that. The response has too often not been good enough. We need to do better.
Now, this does seem to signal a shift in Labour's approach to the Israeli conflict, and people may remember that at the beginning, Keir Starmer did an interview with LBC, and he got a lot of backlash to what he said about being able to withhold water and electricity and food to people in Gaza. He then sort of corrected his comments about 9 days later, but in that time, a lot of councillors, many of the Muslim councillors had resigned, and of course it's felt that the party has lost a lot of support over Gaza, particularly to the Green Party. We're going to hear from two different voices in a moment. We're going to hear from John Woodcock, Lord Walney, a crossbench peer and former independent government advisor on political violence. But first, let's catch up with Dawn Butler, who is the Labour MP for Brent East. Dawn, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, good afternoon. Ayesha, how are you doing?
I'm good. So are you pleased that Andy Burnham has made this apology? Do you think this does represent a significant shift for Labour?
I think Andy's apology yesterday, but also everything that he said, was an emotionally intelligent response to what people have seen on their TV screens, on their phones, every day. And the Labour Party and the Labour government were too slow in calling for a ceasefire. And this doesn't negate from calling out the rise in anti-Semitism and the rise in Islamophobia. It doesn't negate from any of that. So I think it was an extremely powerful but emotionally intelligent response.
Some people have pushed back against it. I was looking at the response to his video that he put out on social media, and there were people saying, look, it's welcome that he's apologised, but he hasn't. They want him to go further. They want him to call this a genocide. The Greens have said that he's hiding behind international courts. What would you say to those people who think he hasn't gone far enough?
Well, number one, he isn't. You can't hide behind the international courts. The international courts are there to do a job, and it is very slow in doing their job, and how they identify. I will call it a genocide because I believe it's a genocide, but the international courts will not do that yet. It doesn't mean that they will never do that, but he's not hiding behind the international courts. The international courts has a job to do. So I think that's the wrong tack to take in regards to that. Of course, you always want people to go further, especially when there's an injustice, as we are seeing now. But I'm very pleased that Andy's also talked about the expansion of the illegal settlements and how wrong that is, and also goods. I mean, we are at the moment in our country receiving goods that are being produced in the illegal settlements. That is a crime, and we should not be or partake in that crime. So I'm really pleased that Andy's mentioned that.
And I mean, Keir Starmer was criticised for his that early interview that he did that caused him a lot of issues, but he then did go on to receive criticism from other parts of the community, and many Jewish people were not happy that he moved the party into the position where they were recognising the state of Palestine. I mean, do you think that it's not fair to say that Keir Starmer got everything wrong on this? I mean, he has received criticism for other things he did.
I didn't say that Keir Starmer's got everything wrong. Calling for a two-state solution is the only way forward. This is the first government to recognise Palestine, and that's a very, very important step. Otherwise, you will never get a two-state solution. So that is something that's been done right. But it doesn't mean that you don't acknowledge when you've been too slow, when you haven't called things out when you should, when we haven't done the work that we need to do around illegal settlements, where we're allowing for illegal properties to be marketed in our country. I don't want to be a part of that. And I don't think, really and truly, most people don't want to either. This is a crime. Removing people from their land is a crime. And we shouldn't be a part of it. We shouldn't allow it. And we should be calling it out.
Okay. And look, another issue that has had a lot of attention and has really started jamming up the criminal justice system was the prescription of Palestine action. And of course, there's lots of, we've seen sort of weeks and weeks of coverage of, older people getting arrested for holding up this sort of banner. And so far, the Labour Party has stayed very resolute about this. They fought it through the courts. They've actually just won the latest, I think that's the final thing in the High Court. You abstained on that vote to prescribe Palestine action. Is that something that you would like to see Andy Burnham overturn?
That's currently, as I understand it, still going through the courts. And there's another appeal, I understand, that's pending on that. So I wouldn't want to jeopardise anything around that. But at the end of the day, I believe in the freedom of speech and I believe in the freedom to protest. We're a democracy and we are very proud of that. And that is part of a well-functioning democracy to have those things. And I think that's important. And I stand by that.
OK, well, look, Dawn, thanks very much for your time. That's Dawn Butler, who's the Labour MP for Brent East. Let's now speak with John Woodcock, Lord Walney, crossbench peer, former Labour MP and former independent government advisor on political violence and disruption. John, welcome to the show.
Hi, Ayesha.
What are your thoughts on this sort of move from Andy Burnham?
I'll answer that, of course, in a moment. Just let me say one thing about where you finish with Dawn on Palestine action, though, if I may, because it's really important that everyone looking at this understands that Palestine action have not been prescribed because they said stuff. They've been prescribed because of the violent criminal actions which they perpetrated over a period of 5 years and more in breaking into defence factories and what they thought to be associated companies, intimidating workers. There's one police officer who had her spine smashed by someone who has been convicted of that. So this is not a freedom of issue and freedom of speech and protest issue on that.
But you had a different view because you put forward an amendment for something slightly different on Palestine action. So you weren't completely agreeing with what the government was doing either.
Well, I was actually, because I thought that Palestine action should be prescribed, but my point was that actually we should have been able to take action on a group like that faster than we did, because it was a bad thing in my view. It's a bad thing that it took 5 years for these people to be rampaging around, causing all the damage that they did, undermining Britain's national security. So, look, I know we're here to talk about Andy Burnham and Israel. I was disappointed by what he said. I had a flicker of optimism when I first saw the headline last night saying that Labour got it wrong, because I was hoping naively that he perhaps was addressing the way in which I think that the Labour government has made a mistake in going in the other direction, and I think that the unilateral recognition of Palestine actually undermined Britain's ability to be able to have an impact in the region and bring that two-state solution that we all want closer together. But what he's actually done is of course so many of us looking at this are deeply concerned about the ongoing situation in Gaza, and we feel pretty bleak about the prospect of a two-state solution at the moment. But what he said yesterday made no mention whatsoever of why this conflict started, of the appalling atrocities that Hamas perpetrated.
He did, to be fair, I watched it. He did mention Hamas. He did talk about Hamas.
Well,
I watched the video. To be fair, he did mention. I did watch the whole video,
because this is what's come out of this seems highly unbalanced, because it's really hard, I think, to if you're an Israeli looking at this and looking at the reaction of the UK and many countries across the world now, they will say, well, what would you have done if there had been a comparative attack? And of course, the size of Israel means that something comparable would have been many, many tens of thousands of Britons slaughtered by terrorists coming over what turned out to be a highly porous border, murdering, raping, beheading, setting on fire civilians for the crime of being Israelis, of being Jewish. They would say to us, well, look, you would have responded incredibly firmly to that. You would have wanted to ensure that that could not have happened again. And that is absolutely what drove the Israeli government to this action. Now, there's really important debate about the conduct of some of this, and what can be done there. But what Andy said was that we should have called for a ceasefire earlier on. Now, at the time that those calls were being made, there was the Israelis were thinking that from their perspective, they were still trying to secure their country from what was a genuinely genocidal threat. The word genocide has been, I think, twisted by the pro-Palestinian groups. And this has been a very deliberate thing. I think it was enacted from pretty much day one of the conflict, before even Israel was going into Gaza. But they had that existential threat, as they saw it, on their border, and they were defending themselves. And I think actually we called for a ceasefire too quickly. And diminished our influence because of that.
So you've got a very strong view that he has said the wrong thing. You're very much on the other side. You're very, you're sort of supportive of not all of it, but the majority of the Israeli action. But what do you think the consequences of Andy? I mean, he's obviously, come out quite early. He hasn't put a lot of flesh on the bone on a lot of his policy, particularly foreign policy. He has come out on this. This signifies a direction of travel. Yeah. What do you think that direction of travel is going to be, and what do you think the consequences are going to be?
Well, there will be strategists looking at this, at the wider hole that the Labour Party is in terms of electoral support, and they're looking at the support that they have lost to reform, on which you can imagine that immigration and law and order is very important. But equally, they are looking at the hemorrhaging of support to the Green Party, and I can imagine that strategists around Andy are saying, look, we've got to find some way for a bridge back for people coming back to us from the Greens.
Okay.
And maybe if we changed our approach on Gaza, that might help. But I mean, I think actually that's the wrong way to conduct foreign policy. You would expect me to say that. But also, I'm not sure it will be the electoral gain that people think, because there is always, and you've seen immediately from Zach Palansky, predictably, he seized on this and said, "Oh well, yeah, but are you going to go further? What are you going to say about
Okay.
calling this a
Genocide, yeah, which
genocide?"
I picked up with John. Yep, yep.
Yeah, and you can't. You will not be able to satisfy that. And if you look like you could be pushed around like this, then people will push harder.
Okay. And just final question to you, John, and look, there's a real range of views, and I think people are pleased that we've showcased two different points of view. But people have just quite a few people have just said, look, do you not have any concerns about excessive action from the Israelis on this?
Yes, I do. I do. I am concerned about this. I'm concerned about the prospects for a two-state solution, but I'm concerned from both sides on this, because I think the conflict has hardened the views of many Israelis. They don't feel that they have a credible partner for peace in the Palestinians at the moment, but also I think you have to look at what is happening on the ground in the Palestinian territories in Palestine, and think, well, look. Are these people really on the verge of being able to be handed a state? So yeah, I don't agree with the strategy at the moment from the Israeli government. Many people in Israel don't agree with it either, but I can absolutely understand how that country feels under siege. And I think if Andy Burnham is going to be a prime minister who shows leadership on the world stage and genuinely wants to have a level of influence in the Middle East, then immediately seeming to shift his position before he's even got office to be even more critical of Israel is not going to help that.